Right, so this is a different little video for a change. It's only 5 minutes long, and it's how to change a signal arm casting and the head on the top. This one's got worn. It was an old pattern where you had the nut on either end. I'll have to show you that after. The old pattern has a nut on the back and a nut on the front. Very prone to the nuts getting loose over time. And then what happens is, can you see these corners here? They start to wear and you'll get sloppiness and everything. Real nightmare. This is the new pattern, which is basically just a clamp round and a bolt goes through there. There's a little tiny groove milled out on this shaft here for the bolt to just slide through. The front, what we call the tennis bat, sits at 11 o'clock. Because I'm at the back of the signal, sits at 11 o'clock there. You might find some of these, if you get them, someone's put them on wrong. Just make sure the tennis bat's at 11 o'clock. Otherwise, you're not going to get your signal pulling off properly. 6 nuts and bolts that go through there, clamps it on dead easy. Changing the signal arm, getting the old one off, fairly simple. Take the back off, drop all that to ground level. You need some rope, potentially someone else down there with you to help out, but you can do it on your own, but there is a certain method you need to do, and I'll show you what that is very quickly. A good sturdy rope. Of course, now I've put this on, it's not as easy to show you. It wraps round the round part of the casting and you bring it back round over itself there, so it acts like a snatch point. And then you can lower it down quite happily using this basically as a winch, because it is round and the weight will carry it down. Keep your hand clear so it's out here. I'm harnessed off, so you want about a good foot, your hand away a good foot. Control it with your 2 hands going down. Don't get your hand anywhere near this because it will catch. But if you wrap the rope back round and over itself that way, it will act as a snatch block and off you go. And you'll get it up quite easy. Getting the arm off is the problem. You'll notice it's a very long shaft. It will be fighting you all the way to the very last and then it'll just suddenly go. What you need to do is literally, and sometimes it depends on what kind of a finial you've got on top of your signal. These ones I usually put my coat on top of, lean right over. I'm harnessed off anyway. So you can get yourself above this to lift that last bit and it goes. Because it will hold itself on that shaft. As you pull that shaft out, it's tipping more and more and more. It can't go anywhere, but the weight is on the end of that shaft and it's trying to bite into the top of this. So once you've gone, you've gone. Getting it up, haul it up. Once you get it to about here, quickly in. And you'll have to lean on top to get it in. And obviously, if you're on a Great Western signal, that's going to be a nightmare. Midland signals, London Midlands, no problems. You get that in. Once you've got it in, tie it off. So you can then get this back bit on. These back bits, when you get them brand new, they will not have a split in there. This will be hard up and you will not get it on that shaft. So what I would recommend you do is get a splitting chisel, drive it in. You can drive it in like that, but I wouldn't recommend it because you're going to have to get the bolt in there and that's sitting where the bolt is. Put it in this way and at least you can use your spanner and leave it off the ladder if you need to get it out again. Yeah, and then you'll get that on quite easy. The old ones, as I say, they have a nut on. These are not the greatest invention in the world. They bite on, they go loose. That one's actually had to be drilled and split pin put through because it was that bad. So we've replaced this now and that's ready to go. So those are just a few pointers. I would say harness off, get yourself a harness, good harness. You'll need it, trust me. With a telegraph pole lineman's lanyard, so you can wrap yourself around the post or wrap yourself around, so that acts as your 3rd point while you're working because you're going to need your hands free. Beyond that, nothing really to point out. Dress your arm up on the ground. I know it's going to be top heavy, but trust me, it's a lot easier dressing up on the ground than doing it up in the air. If you have to do it in the air, the best thing you can do is just lift the arm right up, tie it off and work here, because that from its pivot point will go up like that. That's your best bet, because it's not easy working out there and you certainly will not hold that arm on while you're trying to get the bolts through. So just a few pointers there. Get yourself a good Morrison's bag, I would suggest, to pull your tools up, very handy. And use a lamp case, don't forget, but just protect the lamp. Okay. So here we are, this is our old one. This is the old style casting where everything's cast. So it's an all-in-one block. One thing to note, just for information, there's two different lengths of the spring return rod on it. Some of them also have a lug underneath, so you can pull them from the rear. You can normally pull them from the front. This one's pulled from the front, but you can also pull them from the rear as well. Make sure you get the right length. Luckily, you can actually use, they're interchangeable, the two of them, so you're on a winner. But the new pattern for the signal that we just put up there is this type, where it's got a welded rod. The other one's basically a large threaded rod with a spring on the end, and I'll show you that in a minute. So make sure you get the right one. That's the end that goes on the signal. This is the end that has the spring on it and goes down into the casting. Upper quadrants, lower quadrants, new castings, new pattern castings, old pattern castings, new pattern clamp round, old pattern bolt through. Obviously, they learnt in the old days when you have old pattern castings, if you drill the post, you're going to get problems with it. You'll get rust and rot and components coming loose. So clamp round stuff is the new design. This is what's happened on this one. It's got worn. If you look at that, you can see it's quite a big angle on there. It shouldn't be that big. Now, there is a trick you can do in the intermediate if you haven't got the parts available to get the signal going. If you've ever worked on clamp lock points, you may have come across the 0.3 brass shim, a very super thin brass shim. What you can do, if you can get the nut off, is put a super thin brass shim sliver down there, which will again pack it out basically just till you get the job changed. These are top heavy, so when you're taking them down the signal and pulling them up, just be aware they don't catch on anything going up and down the signal. That's why I say use a rope, and if you do that over and around, it'll act as a snatch block for when you're hauling it up and down. You can see what the problem here is, the wear in that. You can see it's stepped down, it's worn quite badly. They're not the greatest invention in the world. There's not enough thread that comes out the back to even put like a spring washer on the back. Literally, look at the thread on that. You can tell it's been having problems. This is a signal top that we got out in one from its previous life on the BR, and I have a feeling looking at that they've put something like thread lock in it or something. That's like a putty that's gone in there to try and get around the problem back in the day. So obviously we've inherited that. No, we're going to change that and put a new arm in place. These are riveted on and do have a tendency to snap. One thing I would ask you to look out for when you're on your signal, you can get, if you get a lot of snadging on your signal, a lot of snatching, you'll start to get cracks here. Once you start getting a crack there, change the signal, because it will just work its way through and you'll just end up with the arm dropping off. That's happened before now. This one, we actually tried to heat the nut, couldn't get it off. We tried an impact wrench, couldn't get it off. We tried a 2.5 foot scaffold bar on the end of a big number 6 spanner, still won't come off. The end of that thread has had it. That's the reason we're changing this signal. You can see what I mentioned about the tennis bat, as we call it, or the frying pan, however you want to call it. This one's riveted. The other one you can take off. The riveted ones will be in the right position from the factory. The ones you can take off, someone may have messed around with it and put it in the wrong position. So make sure it's at the, as you're facing it, 1 o'clock, or if you're behind it, 11 o'clock positions. Okay? And shafts, as I mentioned, you can see the length of that shaft. When you're trying to push this signal out to change it, it will be trying to fight itself like that, lifting itself up on the back. So what we're going to do here, we're going to rebuild this shaft. We can repair that, chop these off completely and put new nuts in, and we'll keep this as a working spare for some of our older signals. Typical Heritage Railway, we do not like to throw stuff away because it's getting harder and harder to get hold of. But we can remachine this, that's not a problem, and we'll rebuild that back up.